This is Aspen Painting and Wallcovering training video on Sandpaper Basics. The first thing you want to know about sandpaper is what the numbers on the back of a sheet of sandpaper represent. As you see, this one is 60. This one is 120. This one is 400. Now what those numbers represent is the coarseness or the grit of each sheet of sandpaper. The lower the number, the more coarse that sandpaper is going to be, and the higher the number is, the finer that sandpaper is going to be. It's important to select the correct grit of sandpaper for the particular job that you are going to do. So for instance, if you are going to be sanding kitchen cabinets, for instance, and you need a nice smooth finish because you're going to do some fine finish paintwork on those, you want to use a nice smooth sandpaper between each coat to provide a nice smooth finish for the end result. If you're just trying to scuff sand interior trim to prep for painting, a 220 grit would be the ideal grit to use, because you're just trying to give it a light scuff sand to create these tiny microscopic grooves in the paint so that your new paint that you're applying will bite and grab onto. You might want to use a little coarser of a sandpaper, like a 120 or an 80, if there is any old drips or runs in the paint. You want to sand those out before you put a new coat of paint on there. Now let's say you have some old exterior paint. It's kind of peeling and it's built up multiple layers of paint, and you have some chipping and peeling going on. After you scrape off the loose stuff, you might want to use a coarser grit sandpaper, like a 60 or an 80, to help smooth that down a little bit. And then once you start knocking down the edges, you can move to like a 120 sandpaper to feather it in a little finer. Now, in addition to just regular sheets of sandpaper, we also use sanding sponges. This, you'll see, they come in different sizes. This one here has 2 tapered ends, which enables you to get into some corners. This one just has the 1 tapered end. Okay, the larger one you'll use mostly for sanding drywall. The smaller one you'll use for also sanding drywall, but you can use this one here for prepping trim for paint as well. What's nice about the sanding sponge is that when you're sanding trim with different profiles, it conforms to the profile of the trim, which makes the sanding much more of a complete job. Then we have these pole sander pads, which connect to a painter's extension pole. This is a triangle scraper, and then you have the circular head for the pole sander, and both of these are used for prepping drywall ceilings and walls. And then, of course, what we have is the mechanical sander. You'll be using the Festool sander for doing a lot of the finish work that we do. The Festool sander here has this hook and loop system here to keep the pads in place. You'll be using this for sanding drywall repairs. The reason you'll be doing that is because it sucks up the sanding dust into our vacuum. We use a HEPA vac, which you'll attach the hose to this part here, and of course, and then your power cord will be connected into this. Now I'm going to demonstrate how to fold a piece of sandpaper before you're going to get ready to use it. Okay, so you can fold it either in half this way, or you can fold it in half long ways. Either way, it doesn't matter. And so we take it, we're going to fold it in half. You're going to take your 5-in-1 tool, and you're just going to run it up the crease here. Now you've created 2 sheets of sandpaper. Now you're going to create a tri-fold. All right, so you're going to fold it like this and like this. And now you have 3 sides to work with. So when this side is all finished, when you've expired this side and it's no longer effective, you can use to this side, and you open this flap up, turn it over, and you have 3 sides that you can use. And then once this sheet of sandpaper is no longer effective and efficient, then it's time to discard this. Now, we do this also, it makes the sandpaper easy to store in your tool pouch or your back pocket. You always want to keep a piece of sandpaper like this on you at all times, so that's readily available in the event that you need it before you start applying paint. All right, next is how to properly sand a surface. If you're sanding wood or any type of trim or doors, you always want to sand with the grain. Do not sand across the grain, because if you sand across the grain, it's going to create these grooves and it's going to show up in your finish paint. So when you're sanding, always sand with the grain, not against it.